Hare Krishna, we will continue with the third part of chapter 17. So we have heard before in the beginning of this chapter that the faith in the modes, we heard about sacrifice and austerity in the modes. We have heard about austerities of the body and austerity of speech, austerity of the mind. And now we will hear, after you have also heard about austerities in the modes, and now we will hear about, in the last section, about charity in the modes. And then Krishna will say, yes, but whatever activities one performs should be done to please the Lord, because otherwise, with all these sacrifice, penance, and austerities, it's useless, both in this life and the next. Heavy statements. Om Tat Sat is the message. Now, let's start with text 20. That Datavyam iti yattanam diyatenu pakarine desakale sapatrecha tadanam satvikam smitam. Charity given out of duty without expectation of return at a proper place and time to a worthy person is considered to be in the mode of goodness. That and Srila Prabhupada explains how we should give as Vaishnavas charity. Spiritual perfection is always a consideration, therefore charity is recommended to be given in a place of pilgrimage and at a lunar solar eclipse or at the end of the month to a qualified Brahmin or a devotion or a Vaishnava devotee or in temples. Such charity should be given without any consideration of return. In other words, indiscriminate charity is not recommended in Vedic literatures. That is 20. Otherwise, now an explanation of charity in the modes is given also in Srimad Bhagavatam. You can go to the Bhagavatam, and that's given in the second canto, chapter 3, text 17. Ayurati vaipam sanutyam astam se yannasa tasyartiyat sadhan nita utamasloka vartaye. That this is both by rising and setting, the sun decreases the duration of life, except when one utilizes time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. Not sure if this verse is, if this reference here in the study guide is correct. Yeah, it's correct. It's in the last paragraph. The materialistic way of pious activities like charity is recommended in the Smriti Shastras as quoted by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Money given in charity to a suitable person is guaranteed bank balance in the next life. Such charity is recommended to be given to a Brahmin. If the money is given in charity to a non-Brahmin without Brahminical qualification, the money is returned in the next life in the same proportion. If it is given in charity to a half-educated Brahmin, even the money is returned double. If the money is given in charity to a learned, fully qualified Brahmin, the money is returned 100 and 1,000 times. If the money is given to a Veda, Paraga, or one who is factually realized on the power of the Vedas, it is returned by unlimited multiplication. The ultimate end of Vedic knowledge is realization of the personality of God that Lord Sri Krishna has stated in Bhagavad Gita. Vedasa sarvayameva vedya. There is no guarantee of money being returned if given in charity, regardless of the proportion. Similarly, a moment passed in association of a pure devotee by hearing and chanting the transcendental message of the Lord is a perfect guarantee for eternal life, for returning home back to Godhead. Maddama gatva punarjanma na vichate. In other words, a devotee of the Lord is guaranteed eternal life. A devotee's old age or disease in the present life is but an impetus to such guaranteed eternal life. So that's very instructive for us in the modes that charity should be given to Brahmins. Otherwise, yeah, it's not transcendental. So let's go back first to our slideshow. So we have here verse 1. So we read again the summary of this section. Krishna describes charity in the modes with their differing results. All activities are contaminated by the modes, and those defects can be offset by action if done within the modes of nature in Krishna's service and by chanting Om Tat Sat. That's a summary. Actually, all our activities should be aimed at pleasing the Supreme Lord. When sacrifice, penance, and austerity are performed without faith in the Supreme, they are useless both in this life and the next. That's the summary. We go to the verse we just discussed. Charity should be given to a person engaged in spiritual activities. Otherwise, there is no spiritual advancement. So we have here in Vrindavan, they give every year gifts to the sadhus, that sadhu seva, that see mattresses, things they can use in the winter. That is a program from ISKCON Bhagavat Mahavidyalaya in Vrindavan. That text 21. People in passion give charity with a wrong attitude. We will hear about that wrong attitude in the verse. So we go back to the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, verse 21. Yatupatyupakarahtam phalamudisya vapunam diyate sa pariklistam tadhanam rajasam smitam. But charity performed with the expectation of some return or with a desire for fruitive result or in a grudging mood is said to be charity in the mode of passion. That grudging mood. I don't really want to give it, but okay. Yeah. That so here that's 21 in the purport in beginning. Srila Prabhupada says, charity is sometimes performed for elevation to heavenly kingdom. Further at the end, there are many charitable foundations which offer their gifts to institutions where sense gratification is going on. Such charities are not recommended in the scriptures. Only charity in the mode of goodness is recommended. And Srila Prabhupada has a quote on that, a short one. These four beneficial combinations are very rare. Interesting. Charity accompanied by sweet words, knowledge without pride, valor with forbearance, and wealth with a charitable disposition. Hitopadesh. Good. Now we go text 22. The mode of vigilance, probably, if I remember correctly. Adesikali adanam, apatrebya sadhyate, asatkritam, avahyatam, tam tamasam udaritam. And charity performed at an impure place at an improper time to unworthy persons or without proper attention and respect is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Contributions for indulgence in intoxication and gambling are not encouraged here. The sort of contribution is in the mode of ignorance. Such charity is not beneficial. That, yeah. You see that sometimes you get gifts in the mode of ignorance. What to do? That, but we can go here. Yeah, verse 23 we'll see later. It's Om Tat Sat. But there is a quote first. Quote on this charity in the mode of ignorance. Prabhupada, if you make tamasic dan, then you become implicated with his sinful activities. Suppose you want to kill somebody and you are asking, can you give me a nice knife? What will you do? I will kill that man. All right, take it, Danam. I'm giving you in charity. So he will be implicated in the court if it is known that the man supplied the knife. Arrest him, bring him immediately. In the material world, anything you do, if it's not meant for Krishna, then you are immediately a criminal. Dr. Patel replied, sinful activity? Prabhupada, yes, immediately. To spiritualize everything. Krishna says, therefore, yat karosi yat yosi yat tapasyasi dadasyat tat kosvamatarpanam. This is spiritual. Immediately. Karmani vatikaraste mafalis kadachna. Prabhupada says, yes, if you do it for Krishna, then you are not attached to the result. Then no reaction. Dr. Patel said, Tadachtam karma kantya. Prabhupada said, yes, that this is spiritual, Jachnarta karma. Everything is there. Do it for Krishna. Unless you do it for Krishna, everything is material and sinful. That was the last quote on this chapter. But now we have the last verses of this chapter, which is about Om Tat Sat. So this text 23, that's the essence. As long as austerity, sacrifice, and charity are performed in the modes of nature, they are materially contaminated, so useless. But the words Om Tat Sat in the Vedic hymns indicate that an act must satisfy the Supreme Lord to qualify as spiritual. So if there is no connection with Krishna, it's material. When Om Tat Sat is chanted, along with the performance of sacrifice, charity, and austerity, it removes the discrepancies inherent in those activities and ensures that the consciousness of all participants is elevated. That now we read the verse 23. Om Tat Sat iti nirdeso Brahmanastri vidha smita Brahmana Stena Vedesha Chakra Savita Puram. From the beginning of creation, the three words Om Tat Sat were used to indicate the Supreme Absolute Truth. These three symbolic representations were used by the Brahmins while chanting the hymns of the Vedas during the sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. A few points here from the purpose. So when these penances, sacrifice, and charity are aimed at the Supreme Om Tat Sat, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Eternal, they become means for spiritual elevation. Om Tat Sat particularly indicate the Absolute Truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one who acts without following the regulation of the scriptures will not attain the absolute truth. He will get some temporary result, but not the ultimate end of life. The conclusion is that the performance of charity, sacrifice, and penance must be done in the mode of goodness. At the end, Bhagavad Gita recommends, therefore, that any work should be done for Om Tat Sat, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one performs penance, charity, and sacrifice with these three words, is acting in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is a scientific execution of transcendental activities which enables one to return home back to Godhead. There is no loss of energy in acting in such a transcendental way. No loss of energy. So we have here first, in the next verse, 24, Prabhupada will explain Om, and then in the 25, Tat, and 26, 27, Sat. And then he will conclude at the end in 28, when one does something without transcendental objective, useless. So 24 first. Tasmatomityudaritya jnanathana tapakriyaha pravaktante fidanokta satatam brahmavadinam. Therefore, transcendentalist undertaking performances of sacrifice, charity, and penance in accordance with scriptural regulations begin always with Om to attain the Supreme. That Om. That's Om indicates, Srila Prabhupada, that one aspires to attain the Supreme. The performance of everything on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead assures perfection of all activity. And now that is explained in 25. Tat ityana bisandaya valam jahya tapakriya dhanakriya savividha kriyante moksha kanksibhi. Without desiring fruitive results, one should perform various kinds of sacrifice, penance, and charity with the word Tat. So one should perform these activities. But the purpose of such transcendental activities is to get free from material entanglement. Purport: to be elevated to the spiritual position, one should act not for any material gain. Acts should be performed for the ultimate gain of being transferred to the spiritual kingdom, back home, back to Godhead. And now he explains Sat. Sadbhave, sadubhave cha, satyityeta prayuchyate, ashasta karmani tata, satshabda parta chuyate, chahye tapasidane cha, stiti sat iti sotyate, karma cheva tadahtiyam, Satityeva vidiyate. Translation. The absolute truth is the objective of devotional service, of devotional sacrifice, and it is indicated with the word sat. The performance of such sacrifice is also called sat, as are works of sacrifice, penance and charity, which true to the absolute nature are performed to please the Supreme Person of Son of God. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse 3:25 from the teachings of Lord Kapiladev. Satam Pashangamama Virya Samvido Bhavanti Hatkarana Sayana That yours not Abavarka Bhaktmani Shadaratya Bhaktiranya Pramishati. Satam. Satam means the pure devotees. Sat is the Sat indicates Srila Prabhupada, the performance of such activities called Sat. Is the devotee who performs devotional activities. It's called Sat. So the Satam are the pure devotees. That the Satam Prasangam, one should become attached to such pure devotees. That association of devotees is very important. Because before what Kapila Deva explains that that Satam Prasangam, in 23, there it says Prasangamacho Pasamatma Kavyo Vidosaivat Sabado Sadasukato Moksatvam Pavitam. Attachment to material things is the cause of liberation, but that attachment, if it's transferred to the sadhu, to the devotee, it's a cause of liberation, not material entanglement. That attachment to the material is a cause of material entanglement. But attachment to the devotees, to the satam, is a cause of liberation. And if we, but should we, does that mean association with the devotees? Satam Prasangam, Mama Virya Samvido, one should discuss transcendental subject matters about Krishna with devotees. And then everything becomes, by that association, when everything becomes very clear, transcendental knowledge becomes very clear. And that's what essence, what Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, very important for us. We need to discuss it with the devotees. That's something we are doing now. That so Sat. Let's look at the summary. So Om indicates that one aspires to reach the Supreme. Tat indicates that one desires to get free from material entanglement. And then Sat indicates that one must act in Krishna consciousness in association of sadhus who are satam, who are pure. So that's the meaning of Om Tat Sat. And what's the final conclusion? Anything done without a transcendental objective is impermanent and useless. Although there is a process of gradual elevation, the direct process of Krishna consciousness under the guidance of a spiritual master is best. One can thus achieve the ultimate goal of life, pure love of God. So this is a conclusion that you can read the verse. Ashadadaya utam datam. Ashadaya utam datam. Tapastaptam kitam sayat. Asat ich yuchate parta. Nasa pretyano hyam. Anything done as sacrifice, charity and penance without faith in the Supreme or Son of Prita is impermanent. It's called asat, and is useless in this life and the next. So anything done without transcendental objective, whether it be sacrifice or penance, is useless, Srila Prabhupada writes. In the pursuit of all Vedic instructions, the ultimate goal is the understanding of Krishna. No one can obtain a success without following this principle. If one by the association of pure devotees takes directly to Krishna consciousness, that is the best way. And that is recommended in this chapter. To achieve success in this way, one must find the proper spiritual master and receive training under his directions. When that faith matures, of course, is called love of the Godhead. This love is the ultimate goal of the living entities. So we have heard explanations of the charity in the modes, and we have heard to this charity, austerity, penances, that to be successful, one must do it for Om Tat Sat, to please the absolute truth. So the Vedas teach a gradual path of elevation, performing activities in goodness, but Krishna, he recommends devotional service as the best elevation because the objective is the absolute truth. The difference between the Vedic path and Lord Krishna's instructions. Now we are at the end of chapter 17, and we will now start with chapter 18, unless there are questions. Then we continue with 18. Good.